So one very important thing that we must understand before diving deep into the interface of Fusion is that there are a couple different ways that we can actually bring our media into Fusion. Each one of these methods slightly changes the way that we interact with our media once it's in Fusion, so it's really important to understand each one of these so that depending on your situation, you will know what method is the best for you to take on your way into Fusion. In this video, I'll be demonstrating each one of these methods and the pros and cons of each. This is something that was really frustrating to me at first when learning Fusion because no one was really talking about these differences in terms of how you can start in Fusion. So I'm stoked I'm able to present this information to you guys and that you don't have to go through those same struggles that I did when I was first starting off. So with that being said, let's jump right into this lesson. So we can see I have the same timeline open that we were working on before in the edit tab videos, but at the end I've added a few clips here for today's demonstration purposes. Now, if I have a clip selected and I want to open it up in Fusion, I can just make sure that my playhead is over top of that clip and I can open it up in Fusion. Now in here, we can see that that clip shows up in our preview window right here in the right. We can also see that this little playhead in this timeline here is on the exact same frame that it was in the edit tab as well. If we go back to the edit tab, we can see that we are on this frame here. And if we go into Fusion, we are on that exact same frame. Now at this stage, don't worry about any of this at all. I know this interface can look intimidating, especially this area down here. This is where we work with nodes, but don't worry about this at all. We're going to be diving deep into each one of these sections and how they work throughout this Fusion course. For now, I just want to show you guys the differences in how we interact with our media when bringing it into Fusion in these different methods. So that's the first method. We can see that we have opened up this clip from the edit tab into Fusion here. So I just want to show you guys a little something. If I make any changes to our node tree down here, so if I add something like a blur to this and I go back into the edit tab, we can now see that my clip has these 3 stars over here. And that represents that there has been work done on this clip in Fusion. So if we're ever working in the edit tab and we see these 3 stars here, it means that the clip has been opened up in Fusion and some work has been done to it. Now, you might be asking yourself, okay, what happens if you have several clips stacked on top of each other and your playhead is over a bunch of clips like this? Now, if we open up Fusion, what's going to happen? Is it going to bring in all of these clips or is it only going to bring the top clip? Well, let's open it up and let's see. In here, we can see that we've actually only brought in that one clip. Fusion will bring in the clip that is on top of all the other clips here. And naturally, as you scrub through with your playhead, it's going to select the clip that's on top. So it's going to import the clip that is on top of all the other clips. And if we are working here in Fusion, we can see what clip it is that we are working on by enabling this clip button right here, clips. If we press this, we can see all of the clips in our timeline down here, and this will give us an exact visual of what clip it is that we are working on. Now, most of the time I leave this turned off, but if you want to have a better visual representation of what clips you are working with, you can turn this on, and down here you'll be able to see pretty much your entire timeline. You can scroll through here. So let's go back into our edit tab and focus back on this individual clip over here. So if I select this and I go back into Fusion, let's take a look at it in our keyframes window. Now, I'm going to be diving into the keyframes window a lot more in the next interface video, as well as every single other aspect of the interface in Fusion. But for now, I just want to show you guys how we interact with these clips when we are importing them into Fusion. So if you don't see this keyframes window down here, you can enable it by pressing keyframes up here. And in here, we are able to view the entire duration of the entire clip. Now, this isn't just the in and out point. If I scrub through here with this playhead, we can see that we are seeing the entirety of the clip that was in our edit tab. This isn't just the in and out point. The in and out point is actually represented by these 2 yellow lines right here in our timeline right here. So the area between these 2 yellow lines is actually the duration of what we have here in the edit tab, but we can see that in the keyframes window, we are able to view pretty much the entire original clip in here. And really only the section that we want in this situation is from here to here. So it's a very small range within this entire keyframes window. Now, this keyframes window is pretty much like our timeline. It's our visual representation of where our media sits in relation to each other. And not just the media, but also the keyframes for each individual nodes, which we're going to be diving into so much more later on. But this is one of the things that was confusing to me at first about working in a node space. I was asking myself, where are things like keyframes and the timing of my clips, how can those be represented in a node-based layout? But the reality is that we do have a timeline here where we can move clips around in space, move the timing of each clip and each node really in relation to each other in this keyframe space. But as we can see, because we chose to use this method of importing our clip from the Edit tab into Fusion, when we are working in the keyframes window here, we are going to have to, work with all the extra media from this clip, the full length of the clip. And in some situations, that might not be advantageous to us because there's just going to be a lot more unnecessary footage that we don't need to be using here in the keyframes window. In a lot of situations, you're really only going to want to work with this in and out point here, and you're not going to need any media past those in and out points. So I'm just going to delete this blur node over here, and I want to show you guys what the solution to this problem is. So if we go back to the Edit tab and we navigate back to our clip that we had open here, what we can do is right click on this clip and select new Fusion clip. So in short, a Fusion clip is very similar to a compound clip where it basically packages whatever you've selected into a compounded clip. But in this case, it's called a Fusion clip because we have the intention of working with whatever we've put into that Fusion clip in Fusion. With this new Fusion clip selected in the Edit tab, let's go back into Fusion and let's take a look at our keyframes window over here. Let's scrub through and we can see that now nothing extends past the in and out points. We don't have anything else here. We're really only just working with the clip, the in and out points that we made within the Edit tab. So this is something to keep in mind because in a lot of situations, you're not going to want the full length of the original clip. You just want that in and out point. And in those situations, this is the method that you're going to want to go. Now, let's say you did want to now change the in and out point, or you just wanted to move to a different part of the clip. Well, we can actually go back into the Edit tab, and what we can do is right-click on this Fusion clip and click Open in Timeline. This is basically very similar to going into a compounded clip. And inside of this Fusion clip, we are able to make adjustments to the clip. So let's say we wanted to slip it to go to a different time. We can slip it in here, and let's go back into the main edit, select our Fusion clip. We can go into Fusion, and in here we have that new range that we had just selected, update in Fusion here. Now in the keyframes window, we're also able to do things like trim our clips and move them around, but we wouldn't be able to slip the clip like we were able to in the Edit tab and use a different part of the original clip inside this duration here. So that's something to keep in mind. What we would have to do is, do what we just did, go back into the Fusion clip, slip it in here, make our changes inside of this. It's, if we wanted to use a completely different part of the clip, and then we can go back into the main timeline, go back into here, and now we're working with that different range of the same clip. Now I'm just going to go back in here, Command Z what I just did, because I don't want to be working with that part of the clip. But that's something to keep in mind. Now, obviously, we don't want to be going back and forth between the Edit tab and Fusion tab just so that we can make that slip change, just so that we can change what part of the clip we want to use here. That takes a lot of work. So if you are going to go the route of creating a new Fusion clip, make sure that your timing and everything is exactly how you want it, and then you can go that route. Because if you're trying to do things like slip your clips back and forth in here to use different parts of the same clip, this is going to be a more tedious route. This is the route you'd go if you are basically like locked in, confident with the in and out points of the clips that you are putting into your Fusion clip. And for me, there are a lot of situations where I work in Fusion with really only one clip. So this is a great method when you are working with just one clip. But when you start working with multiple pieces of media, you're going to want to be able to retime and have more retime flexibility in that keyframes window. So this will not be the best method for that. I will be showing you guys the best method for that in a second. But for now, let's do the same thing that we just did with this single clip, but with multiple clips. So with a bunch of clips selected, let's right click on them and select new Fusion clip. Now we can see that it's created a new Fusion clip here, similar to a compound clip. It's basically grouped all of those clips together and told DaVinci, hey, we are now going to be opening up all of these clips in Fusion. So with this Fusion clip selected, let's open up Fusion and see what it gives us. Now, if we take a look at our nodes area here, we can see that it's done some things here, which might look confusing to you. Don't worry about this at all. Basically, what it's done here is it's told DaVinci, I want to stack all of these different pieces of media on top of each other because that's how they were over here before we made this Fusion clip. And of course, if we right click on this, click open in timeline, we can see that they are stacked on top of each other. And this node tree right here, and if we go back to the main edit tab, select this clip, we can see that that is represented by this node tree. It doesn't matter if you understand what's going on here. I promise you, I'm going to explain this in depth. And this is actually fairly simple to understand here. We're going to be talking about that a lot later on. But if we take a look at our keyframes window over here, we can see that we have clips stacked on top of each other. Now, we're pretty zoomed out here. And a shortcut that we're going to be using a ton is this little button over here, zoom to fit. It kind of just like scales everything in to fit the frame size of the keyframes window. So we can see that we have this same layout that we had before in our edit tab over here in the actual Fusion clip. We have this, these three clips stacked on top of each other. We can see that in the keyframes window here in Fusion as well. Now, a really important thing to understand is that in the keyframes window, the way that the clips are layered on top of each other, it doesn't matter at all. This is just a reference as to where each clip sits in relation to the other clips in terms of its timing on the timeline. But the way that the clips are stacked inside the keyframes window here, it literally doesn't matter. What does matter is the way that our nodes are connected here in our nodes window. Like I said before, do not worry about this. We're going to be diving deep into the logistics of how all this works later on. But for now, what we want to pay attention to is just how we are able to view all of our media inside the keyframes window. Now, we are able to move our media around in the keyframes window as well. We can select one of our clips, move it around, and we can see that it's starting to tweak out a little bit. What we could do over here to the left is just collapse each one of these so that we're not seeing the audio information for each clip. We don't need to see that. But what we can notice is when we start to move our clips around in time in our keyframes window, they're jumping around. Things are not acting like you would think that they should act. And this is like a bit of a glitch in Fusion. I'm not sure if they're going to be changing this or updating this in the future, but all we need to understand is that this is how the clips are going to behave if we are going to bring them into Fusion in this way. If we're bringing multiple pieces of media in as a Fusion clip, bringing it into Fusion, and then wanting to change the timing of these clips in relation to each other here in the keyframes window, we're going to be experiencing issues like this where things kind of jump around. So this is not the best method of importing multiple pieces of media from the edit tab into Fusion if you do plan on changing the timing of where each clip sits in the keyframes window. Now we can trim clips too, but we can see that things aren't behaving the way that we want them to. So I'm just going to Command Z, undo all of that. And what I can do is actually go up to Fusion here and I can just select Reset Composition and it will reset things back to the start. Now in our keyframes window, we can also see this red bar here. And basically all this red bar is just a representation of the in and out point of our entire Fusion composition. So if I disconnect this line here from the media out, we're able to see this full red bar. And this is basically the span of the entire Fusion composition. So this red bar is there to basically let us know the range of our composition and where we should be working within. This is something we'll be diving way deeper into this later on, but just know that this red bar is just a visual representation of